everyone. Now I am going to solve this question. Question says that Hiva walked eastward with a speed of 0.98 meter per second. If it takes him 34 minutes to walk to the store, how far has she walked? The question asks to us how far has she walked. It means it's asking x. And in the question, we have given speed, which is v, and we have time, which is given 34 minutes. And formula about this, v equal x over t. And here question says calculate the x. So due to formula x equal v times t, speed times time. Speed given 0.98 meter per second, and the time given 34 minutes. But I have to convert time into second because here it's given meter per second, so time must be in second. So to convert it to second, I have to multiply time with the 60, so it's gonna be 2040 seconds. And now let's continue from here with the formula x equal v times t. And now I'm going to substitute them. V equal 0.98 meter per second times time equal 2040 seconds. And second goes, we have meter as a unit, and it must be meter. 0.98 times 2040 gonna be 1999.2. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. Now we are going to solve this question. In this question, it says Hooker rides south on his bicycle straight line for 15 minutes with an average speed of 12.5 km per hour. What is this displacement? That means it's asking here delta x. So what is the delta x? We are going to try to find delta x now. And first step, v average equal delta x over delta t. And question says what is the delta x? So delta x equal v average times delta t. And the second step, we have to check the givens, and v average given 12.5 kilometer per hour, and time given 15 minutes. I have to convert it into second or hour. When I check the v average, it is given kilometer per hour, so I have to convert time into hour. 15 minutes equal how many hours? To find it, we have to divide it to 60. So 15 over 60, 1 over 4, and it's gonna be 0.25 hours. And the third step is the substitution. Now I'm going to substitute all those given in the formula. Delta x equal v average times delta t. V average is 12.5 kilometer per hour times delta t is 0.25 hour. Hour and hour cancel each other. Finally, delta x equal 3.125 kilometer. Thanks for listening. everyone. This question says that it takes you 9.5 minutes to walk with an average velocity of 1.2 meter per second to the north from the bus stop to the museum entrance. What is your displacement? In this question, it's asking delta x, and if we write the givens, v average equal 1.2 meter per second, and the time given 9.5 minutes. First step, we have to write the formula v average equal delta x over delta t, and the question asking what is delta x, so delta x equal from cross multiplication v average times delta t. And the second step, v average is given 12.5 meter per second, and delta t given 9.5 minutes. So now I have to convert time into second. So it is equal 570 seconds, and into third step it will be substitution. Delta x equal v average times delta t. V average 12.5 meters per second times delta t is equal 570 seconds. Delta x gonna be 7125 meters. Thanks for listening. Everyone. In this question it says Aram drives his car with an average velocity 48 km per hour. So we have average velocity to the east. How long will it take him to drive 144 km straight away? In this question it says how long. How long means it's asking time. In the first step, let's write the givens. We have the average, which is equal 48 km per hour, and we have delta x, which is 144 km, and the question says how long. That means what is the delta t. In the second step, I'm going to write the formula of v average. V average equal delta x over delta t, and the question says find the delta t, so I will send the delta t here, and the v average instead of delta t due to cross multiplication, so delta t gonna be delta x over v average, and the unit of the v average kilometer per hour, and unit of the delta x kilometer, so I will not convert anything. I will do in the third step only substitution. Delta t equal delta x over v average, and the delta x 144 over v average 48, so it's gonna be 3 hours. Thanks for listening. In this question it says look back at item 4. How much time would Aram save by increasing his average velocity to 56 km per hour to the east? And previous question time was 3 hours. Now in this question I am going to calculate time, and I will subtract time between them, and I will find the saving time. And the first step, the givens. We average now, it's equal 56 kilometer per hour, and the previous question we had delta x, which is equal 144 kilometer. In the second step, again I'm going to write the formula. We average equal delta x over delta t, and now I'm going to calculate the delta t. Delta t equal delta x over v average. And in the third step, I will substitute them. Delta t equal delta x over v average. Delta x is 144, v average is 56, so result gonna be 2.57 hour. And in this question we have a fourth step. I'm going to calculate the time difference between them. So now I'm going to calculate the delta t difference, or delta t save. It's gonna be 3 hours minus 2.57 hour, and it's gonna be 0.43 hour. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. In this question, it says bus travels 280 km south, straight path, average velocity of 88 km per hour. And the bus stopped for 24 minutes, then it traveled 210 km to the south again, and with the average velocity of 75 km per hour. And at the A, it's asking how long does the total trip last. That means it's asking what is the delta t, and it's at the B, it's asking what's the average velocity of the total trip. So B, I have to calculate V average. And let's solve the firstly A. I have three-way here, three part. The one part, it moves 208 kilometers with the average speed of 88 kilometers per hour, and it stopped 24 minutes. Then it goes in the same direction 210 kilometers with the 75 kilometers per hour. And here for each part I will calculate the time. For each part I will calculate the time t2 and t3. Then I will add them to each other to find final answer. First, the formula of V average, it's equal delta x over delta t. I will apply this formula for t1 and t3 because t2 is given directly. So delta t equal delta x over v average. So t1 equal delta x over v average. Delta x for the first period 280, and v average is 88, 3.18 hour. And t2 gonna be delta x over v average again, and the delta x in the third period 210 over 75, 2.8 hours. This is the t1 and t2. Here delta t equal t1 plus t2 plus t3, and the t2 is the 24 minute. 24 minute means 0.4 hour. So delta t gonna be t1, which is 3.18 plus t2 0.4 plus t3 2.8 hour. So finally t gonna be 6.38 hour. Now I'm gonna solve the b. At the b it's asking what is average velocity. V average equal delta x over delta t. Now I'm going to substitute given V average. All the total way is sum of the 280 plus 210. And the delta t as we calculate 6.38. So V average gonna be 76.80 kilometers per hour. Thanks for listening. Everyone. In this question, it say shuttle bus comes to a sudden stop. To avoid hitting a dog, it accelerates uniformly, negative 4.1 meter per second square, as it slows from 9 to 0. What is the time needed for the bus stop? And the first step, I'm going to write given acceleration is negative 4.1 meter per second square, and this is the V initial and this is the V final. V initial is the 9 because it's stop, so final velocity gonna be 0. And the question, in this question, it's asking what is the time. And in the next step, I'm going to write a formula of the acceleration. Acceleration is delta V over delta t, and it means V final minus V initial over time. And in this question it's asking time, so time equal V final minus V initial over acceleration, and the V final, V initial and the acceleration all given, so I'm going to substitute them in the third step. So time equal V final minus V initial over acceleration. V final is the 0 minus V initial is the 9 over acceleration is negative 4.1. And this is equal negative 9 over negative 4.1, negative and negative gonna be positive. So final result gonna be 2.2 seconds. Thanks for listening. Everyone. In this question it says a car traveling 7 meters per second accelerate uniformly 2.5 meter per second to reach speed of 12 meter per second. How long does it take for this acceleration to occur? So in this question, first of all, it's asking what is the time, and acceleration is given 2.5 and V initial 7, then V final given as a 12. And in this question it's asking time. So in this question I'm gonna use a formula of the acceleration. At the first step, acceleration formula is V final minus V initial over time. So I will send the time here and acceleration here because it's asking time. So time gonna be equal V final minus V initial over acceleration. And at the second step I'm gonna substitute them. T equal V final minus V initial over acceleration. Final velocity is the 12, initial velocity is the 7, over acceleration is 2.5. It's gonna be 5 over 2.5. That means the answer is 2 seconds. Thanks for listening. In this question it says a cyclist reduces speed from 6.5 to 0 with an acceleration of negative 1.2 meter per second square. How long does it take? So in this question it's asking time. At this question I'm gonna use the acceleration formula. Acceleration formula is equal v final minus v initial over time. And it's asking time. I will send the time there and acceleration there because of the cross multiplication. So time equal v final minus v initial over acceleration. At the second step, I will do substitution. Time equal v final minus v initial over acceleration. Final velocity is 0. Initial velocity is 6.5 over acceleration is negative 1.2. So it's gonna be negative 6.5 over negative 1.2. That means negative and negative cancel each other. Final result gonna be 5.4 seconds. Thanks for listening. In this question it says the velocity of the bicycle changed from negative 1.2 meters per second to negative 6.5 meter per second during 25 minutes. What's the acceleration? So it's asking acceleration, and the initial velocity is negative 1.2 and the final velocity negative 6.5 and the time is given 25 minutes. So I have to convert it into second. So to convert minute to second, I have to multiply it by the 60. So 25 times 60 gonna be 1,500 seconds. And the formula of the acceleration is v final minus v initial over time. And the final velocity is negative 6.5 minus initial velocity negative 1.2 over time is the 1,500. So acceleration gonna be negative and negative will be positive. Negative 6.5 plus 1.2 over 1,500. So it will be negative 5.3 over 1,500. Then result gonna be negative 0.0035 meter per second square. Thanks for listening. In this question it says suppose that the bicycle in the item 4 an average acceleration 4.7 10 to negative 3. So acceleration 4.7 times 10 to negative 3. And how much does its speed change after 5 minutes later? So our time gonna be 5 minutes and I have to convert it in the second. So I will multiply it by 65 times 60 gonna be 300 seconds. And previous question, initial velocity is negative 1.2 meter per second. And here at the A, it's asking what is the final velocity. I'm gonna use formula of the acceleration v final minus v initial over time. Then from the cross multiplication, v final minus v initial equals a multiplied by the time. And so v final gonna be equal v initial plus a times t. And finally we finally equal initial velocity is the negative 1.2 plus, and the acceleration is 4.7 times 10 to negative 3 multiplied by the time. Time is given 300 seconds. So result gonna be V final gonna be 0.21 meter per second. And now I'm gonna solve the B. At the B it says if the treadmill initial speed 1.7 meter per second, what's the final speed? B. V final equal V initial plus 80, and initial speed is 1.7 meter per second plus acceleration is 4.7 times 10 to negative 3 multiply by the time of 300 seconds. So answer gonna be 3.11 meter per second. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. In this question it says a car accelerates uniformly from rest. That is the important word. Speed of 23.7 km per hour in 6.5 seconds. What is the distance covered by the car? And it's asking distance, and for formula of distance due to this question, half x equal half v initial plus v final multiplied by the time. And I will write the givens. What is the initial velocity? Initial velocity it's 0 because it says from rest. Okay. And the time is given 6.5 seconds. Then final velocity we final equal 23.7 kilometers per hour, and it is kilometer, it's given kilometer per hour. I have to convert it into meter per second because the unit of the time is second. So to convert it from kilometer per hour to meter per second, 23.7, I will convert kilometer into meter. That means 1000 meter over 1 hour equal 3600 second. So the final gonna be 6.58 meter per second. Next step, I will substitute them in the formula. X equal half v initial plus v final times t. Half times v initial velocity is the 0 plus final velocity is the 6.58 meter per second multiplied by the time, and the time is given in this question 6.5. So final x gonna be 21.385 meters. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. In this question it says when Zilan applies the brake of the car slows uniformly from 15 meter per second to 0 meter per second in 2.5 seconds. How many meters before a stop sign must she apply her brakes in order to stop at the sign? So that means it's asking what is the x, and here in this question it says slows uniform. That means we are going to use uniform acceleration formula, which is x equal half times v initial plus v final multiplied by the time. And the initial velocity is given 15 and the final velocity is given 0 and the time is given 2.5 seconds. Now I will substitute them in the formula. 1 over 2 multiplied by the initial is 15 plus final is 0 multiplied by the 2.5. So finally x gonna be 18.75 meters. Thanks for listening. Everyone. In this question, it says a driver in a car traveling speed of 78 km per hour sees a cat 101 meter away on the road. How long will it take for the car accelerate uniformly? And it says again, accelerate uniformly, stop in exactly 99 meter. So that means the car must stop in the 99 meter. So this is x, and it says uniformly accelerate and stop. So if it says stop finally, so we final, that means final velocity gonna be 0, and the x must be 99 meters, and initial velocity is 78 kilometer per hour to kilometer per hour to meter per second. I have to convert this because the unit of the x is given meter, or I can convert meter into kilometer, but I prefer in this question convert kilometer per hour into meter per second. 78 times 1000 meter over 3600 second. So we initial gonna be 21.66 meter per second. And I will substitute given in the formula, and the question is, in this question, how long? How long means it's asking what is the time. So x equal half v initial plus v final multiplied by the time. So it's asking time. And x given 99 equal half. V initial is given 21.66 plus V final gonna be 0 multiplied by the time. And then 99 equal 21.66 over 2 gonna be 10.83 t. So if you divide by both sides 10.83, 10.83, we're gonna find t, and the t will be 99 over 10.83. That means that's equal 9.14 seconds. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. In this question it says a car enters freeway with a speed of 6.4 meter per second and accelerate uniformly for 3.2 kilometers in 3.5 minutes. How fast car moving after this time? So in this question it's asking what is the final velocity, and the initial velocity is given 6.4 meter per second, and the x is given 3.2 kilometer. I have to convert it into meter. It multiplied by the 1000, it will be 3200 meter, and the time is given 3.5 minutes. So I have to convert it into second by multiplying 60. 3.5 times 60, it's gonna be 210 seconds. In this question I gonna use the formula of the delta x equals half v initial plus v final multiplied by the time, because givens are initial velocity x and the time, and it's asking what is the final velocity. So x is the 3200 equal half v initial 6.4 plus it's asking what's the v final multiplied by time 210, and I will send the 2 here, it will be 6,400 equal 6.4 plus V final times 210. If we divide by both sides 210 and 6.4 plus V final equal 30.47. So if we send 6.4 to the other side, it's gonna be negative. We final equal 30.47 minus 6.4. Finally, we final will be 24.07 meter per second. Thanks for listening. In this question it says a car with an initial speed of 23.7 km per hour accelerate a uniform rate of 0.92 meter per second square for 3.6 seconds. Find the speed and the displacement for the car. So it's asking what is the speed and what is the displacement. That means what is the v and what is the x. And here let's write the givens. V initial equal 23.7 kilometers per hour, and another given acceleration which is 0.92 meters per second square, and the time is given which is 3.6 seconds. Acceleration unit meter per second square, unit of the time second. So I have to convert initial velocity into meter per second, and initial velocity is given kilometer per hour. So 23.7 times 1000 meters over 3600 seconds. So it's gonna be 6.58 meter per second. And at the first case it's asking final speed, that means V final, and we have formula about the V final, which is V final equal V initial plus acceleration multiplied by the time. And it's asking x, formula of the x is equal V initial times t plus half a t squared. So for the V final formula, V final equal V initial plus a multiplied by the time, and initial velocity is 6.58 meter per second plus acceleration is 0.92 multiplied by the time, which is 3.6. So the final answer is gonna be 9.892 meter per second. And the formula of the x is V initial times t plus half a t squared. Initial velocity is 6.58 multiplied by the time, which is 3.6 in the brackets, plus half. Acceleration is 0.92 multiplication, and the time is 3.6 squared. Then x gonna be 6.58 times 3.6 is the 23.688 plus 5.961, and then finally our answer gonna be 29.65 meter. Thanks for listening. Question 2, it says an automobile with an initial speed of 4.3 meter per second accelerates uniformly at the rate of 3 meter per second square. Find the final speed and the displacement after 5 seconds. So it's asking final speed, that means v final, and the displacement, which is x. And firstly I'm gonna write the givens. Initial speed is 4.3 and it says accelerate uniformly, so acceleration is 3 meter per second square and the time is given 5 seconds, and the question says calculate the final velocity and calculate the x, which is displacement. Firstly, formula of the final velocity is v initial plus acceleration multiplied by the time. Initial velocity is 4.3 plus acceleration is 3 times time is the 5, so it will be 15 plus 4.3. Finally it's gonna be 19.3 meter per second. And the formula of the x is v initial times t plus half a t squared. V initial is the 4.3 multiplied by the time, which is 5 in the brackets, plus half times acceleration is the 3 multiplied by the time squared, that means 5 squared. And the x gonna be 21.5 plus 37.5. Some of them gonna be 59 meters. Thanks for listening. Third question, it says a car starts from rest. If the car or an object starts from rest, that means initial velocity must be 0 and travel 5 seconds with a uniform acceleration, that means time is 5 seconds, and the acceleration given negative 1.5 meter per second square. And it's asking what is the final velocity of the car, that means what's the v final. Then it says how far does the car travel in this time interval, that means it is saying what is the x. Final velocity formula is equal to v initial plus a multiplied by the time. So it's equal, initial velocity is 0, so this will be 0. Acceleration is negative 1.5 multiplied by the time, which is 5, so it's gonna be negative 7.5 meter per second. And then it's asking what is the x, and the formula of the x is v initial times t plus half a t squared, and initial velocity is 0, so this part will be 0, so the formula in this case it will be half a t squared only. And if you substitute the given, half times a is negative 1.5 multiplied by the time is 5 squared, so finally x gonna be negative 18.75 meters. Thanks for listening. Fourth question, it says a driver of car traveling at 15 meter per second applies the brake, causing uniform acceleration negative 2 meter per second square. How long does it take the car to accelerate to final speed 10 meter per second? So it's asking time. here, and it says how far has the car moved during the braking period. So here also it's asking what is the x in this period. And let's write the givens first. We have initial velocity, which is 15 meter per second, and the final velocity, it says 10 meter per second, and our acceleration is negative 2 meter per second square. And question says calculate the time for this and calculate the x for this. And we have a formula. V final formula equals V initial plus a times t, and here we know the final velocity, we know the initial velocity, and we know the acceleration, so we can calculate the time. If we substitute the givens, final velocity is 10 equal initial velocity is 15 plus acceleration now negative 2 multiplied by the time. If we send this to here, it will be negative 5 equal negative 2t. So t gonna be 5 over 2. That means t will be 2.5 seconds. This is the time. And the x, formula of the x is v initial multiplied by the time plus half at squared. And initial velocity is the 15 multiplied by the time, as we calculate 2.5 plus half. Acceleration is negative 2 times time is 2.5, and we have to take it square. And then x gonna be 15 times 2.5, 37.5 plus negative 6.25, and finally it's gonna be 31.25 meters. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. In this question it says a car traveling initially 7 meters per second accelerates uniformly at the rate of 0.8 meters per second square for a distance of 245 meters. Find the velocity of the car at the end of the acceleration. So it's asking here final velocity, its velocity after it's accelerate for 125 meters, its velocity after it's accelerate 67 meters. And the givens v initial is 7, acceleration is 0.8, and the x is 245 meters. And the formula about this, we have a time independent formula. V final square equal V initial square plus 2ax. And for the a, if we use this formula, V final square equal V initial square plus 2ax. And the V initial is 7, so 7 squared plus 2 times a is the 0.8 times x is 245. So we final gonna be 49 plus 392, and then we final square gonna be 49 plus 392, so it will be 441. Then if you take the square root of the both sides, we will find the V final, and the V final is equal 21 meters per second. Now I'm gonna solve B. At the B, I will use same formula, but for the B, x is equal 125. V final square equal V initial square plus 2ax, and the V initial again 7 square plus 2 times a is the 0.8 and now x is the 125, and the final square gonna be 49 plus 200. So final square gonna be 249. If you take the square root of the both sides, final gonna be 15.78 meter per second. Now I'm gonna solve the c. At the c, x equals 67 meter, and then I will use the same formula. V final square equal V initial square plus 2ax, and the V final square equal initial again 7 square plus 2 times 0.8 times 67, and the final square will be 49 plus 107.2. Then the final square gonna be 156.2. If you take the square root of the both sides, we will find the V final, and the V final is equal 12.5 meter per second. Thanks for listening. In this case, it says a car accelerates uniformly in a straight line from rest. It says from rest. That means initial velocity is 0 at the rate of 2.3 meter per second square. It is the acceleration. What is the speed of the car after it has traveled 55 meter? Let's write the given first. We have acceleration, which is 2.3, and we have initial velocity, which is 0, and then we have x, which is 55 meter. And the choice of A, it says what speed of the car after it has traveled 55 meter. The formula about it, V final square equal V initial square plus 2ax, and the initial velocity is 0, so we will use the formula as a V final square equals 2ax, and the 2 times a is the 2.3 times x is the 55, and V final square gonna be 253. If you take the root of the both sides, V final gonna be 15.9 meter per second. And at the B, it says how long does it take the car travel 55 meter. So what does it mean, how long does it take the car travel 55 meter? It's asking time. So to calculate time, I have another formula. X equals half V initial plus V final multiplied by the time. And x is given, initial velocity is 0, final velocity I calculated here, and only missing is the t. So instead of x, 55 equal half times V final, which is 15.9 multiplied by the t. And if I send 2 here, it will be 110 equal 15.9 t. So if you divide it by both sides, 15.9 t gonna be finally 6.9 seconds. Thanks for listening. In this question it says a certain car is capable of accelerating at a uniform rate of 0.85 meter per second square. What is the magnitude of the car's displacement as it accelerates uniformly from speed of 83 km per hour to one of 94 km per hour? So in this question it's asking what is the x. So we are going to calculate x first of all, and let's write the givens. We have acceleration, which is 0.85 meter per second square, and we have speed. Initial speed is 83 km per hour, and final speed 94 km per hour. So in this question, initial and final speeds are given km per hour, so I have to convert them meter per second. V initial is 83 times, instead of 1 kilometer, 1000 meters, over, instead of hour we have to put seconds, 3600 seconds, so it's gonna be 23.05 meter per second. And we will do same steps. I will convert it meter per second, 94 times 1000 over 3600, so it's gonna be 26.11 meter per second. And these are the givens. And now I'm going to use formula to calculate the x, which is v final square equal v initial square plus 2ax, and the final velocity 26.11 square equal initial velocity 23.05 square plus 2 times a is 0.85 times x, and 26.11 square is equal 681.79, and 23.05 square equal 531.55, plus 2 times 0.85 is 1.7x. I will send 531.55 to left side. Result will be 150.24, which is equal 1.7x. So I will divide both sides 1.7 to calculate x. So x gonna be equal 88.37 meter. Thanks for listening. In this question it says bacterium drift at a constant speed of 3.5 millimeters per second. Petri dish. Petri dish means is this is the Petri dish, and the diameter of Petri dish 8.4 centimeters, and this is the our x, which is 8.4 centimeter. But in this question speed given in millimeter per second, so I have to convert centimeter into millimeter. It's gonna be 84 millimeter, and it's asking what is the shortest possible time. So v equal x over t. Due to this, from the cross multiplication, t equal x over v, and the x given 84 millimeter, and v is given 3.5 millimeter per second, so it's gonna be 24 seconds. Thanks for listening. In this question it says a child pushing shopping cart at a speed of 1.5 meter per second. How long will it take? That means here it is asking delta t. How long will it take the child push the cart down an aisle with a length of 9.3 meters? So in the first step, I'm going to write the given speed equal 1.5 meter per second, and another given length, which is the x, is 9.3 meter. And the question says what is the delta t or t. And in the second step, I'm going to write the formula v equal x over t. Then question says what is the t, time equal x over v. In the third step, I will do substitution, t equal x over v. X is 9.3 meter and the v is 1.5 meter per second, and the time gonna be 6.2 seconds. Thanks for listening. In this question it says an athlete swims from the north end to south end 50-meter pool in 20 seconds. If we draw north and the south, east and the west. So it is swimming from north to south 50 meters and 20 seconds, and makes round trip starting position 22 seconds. So it's return back in 22 seconds. A says what is the average velocity of the first half of the swim? So the average formula is equal delta x over delta t, so that for the first half delta x is the 50 meter and the time given 20 seconds, so it's gonna be 2.5 meter per second. And at the B, it's asking what's the average velocity for the second half. So V average is gonna be delta x over delta t again, and the x is constant because it's coming back on the same way, which is 50 meter, but now time is 22 seconds, so our result gonna be 2.27 meter per second. And at the C, it's saying what's the average velocity for the round trip. That means finally it will return the same position of the initial. So at the C, delta x will be 0 because it's returned the same position. V average is gonna be delta x over delta t. That means 0 over delta t. It must be 0, 2. Thanks for listening. In this question, we have two students walk in the same direction along the straight path. One of it velocity 0.9 meter per second, the other one 1.9 meter per second. So we have two guys and two different velocities. Assuming at the A, it says assuming that they start at same point at the same time, how much sooner does the faster students arrive at the destination 780 meter away? So the guy which is faster, let's say A, it moves from one position to another position, and the guy which is slower, let's say, it moves same position. The total way is the 780 meter, but the faster guy, we can say it is speed 1.9 meter per second. The slower one, let's say v2, 0.9 meter per second. Now I'm going to calculate the both time and I will subtract them each other. For first one, I'm going to say t1, the slow one gonna be t2. And the formula of the v equal x over t, from this t gonna be equal x over v, and t1 will be x over v1. X is the 780, v1 is the 1.9, and it will be 410.52 seconds. And the t2 gonna be x over v2, and it will be 780 over 0.9. That result will be 866.66 seconds. And if we take the difference, we are going to find sooner time. So delta t will be t2 minus t1, and t2 is the 866.66 minus t1 410.52. So it will be equal 456.13 seconds. Now I'm going to solve b. At the b it says how far, asking about x, would the student have to walk so that faster student arrive 5.5 minutes before the slower student. That means 5.5 minutes means 330 seconds sooner it must be, or earlier it must be. And for the first one and the slow one, I will make a chart. And the first one, time t1, I'm going to say, and it will be t. And the v1, 1.9 meter per second. And the slow one, time, I'm gonna say t2, and it's time 330 seconds slower, so it will be t plus 330, and v2 is gonna be 0.9 meter per second again. And they are going to cover same path, so x and x will be their distance, and x equal t1 times v1 here, and here x equal t2 times v2, and x equal t1 is the t times v1 is the 1.9, and the x here equal v2 is the 0.9 times t2 is the t plus 330. So these two x equal each other. That means 1.9 t equal 0.9 t plus, when we multiply these two, we will obtain 297. So when I send this to here, it will be t, and the t gonna be 297 seconds. And this is the time difference, but it's asking far, that means destination difference. So x equals t1 times v1. From this formula I can calculate it. So x equal t1 is the t, so it is 297 times v1 is 1.9, so x gonna be here 564.3 meters. Thanks for listening. Welcome everyone. In this question it says a car accelerates uniformly at rate of 2.6 meter per second square. How long does it take for a car to accelerate from speed 88.5 km per hour to speed of 96.5 km per hour? And in this question it says how long. That means it's asking time first of all. We have to find time. And we have an initial velocity and the final velocity. Initial velocity which is equals 88.5 km per hour. And final velocity which is 96.5 km per hour. And the acceleration also given which is plus 2.6 meter per second square. Acceleration is meter per second square and the velocity is kilometer per hour, so I have to convert kilometer per hour into meter per second. I have to do this operation first. V initial equals 88.5 times, to convert from kilometer per hour to meter per second I have to multiply with 1000 and divide it by 3600, because 1 kilometer equals 1000 meter, 3600 seconds equal 1 hour. So this multiplication will be equal 24.58 meter per second. And for the V final, that's equal 96.5. I will do same operation, 1000 over 3600. This calculation will be equal 26.8 meter per second. And for this part I have some formulas and it's asking how long. That means it's asking time. The formulas about the time, I have x equal half v initial plus v final multiplied by the time, and v final equal v initial plus a times t, and x equals v initial multiplied by the time plus half a t squared, and finally v final square equal v initial square plus 2a x. I have to use one of this formula. I will use second formula because I have v final, I have v initial, I have acceleration, I can calculate the time. V final equals v initial plus a times t, and the final velocity is 26.8, equal initial velocity is 24.58 plus acceleration is 2.6 t multiplied by the time. If I send this to other side, it's gonna be 8 equal 2.6 times t. If we divide it by both sides 2.6, t will be equal 3.08 seconds. Thanks for listening. In this question it says Karazhan accelerates his skateboard uniformly along a straight path from rest to 12.5 meter per second in 2.5 seconds. So given it says from rest, that means v initial is 0, v final is 12.5, and the time is given 2.5. At the A it's asking what is the acceleration, and to calculate acceleration I have to use formula of v final equal v initial plus at, because final velocity is given, initial velocity is given, and the time is given. I can calculate the acceleration, and the initial velocity in this question 0, and the final velocity is 12.5 equal acceleration times time 2.5. So if you divide by both sides 2.5, acceleration gonna be 5 meter per second square. And for the B, it's asking what is the Karazhan displacement. So it's asking displacement. For displacement, I have directly two rules. The one which is x equals half v initial plus v final multiplied by the time. I have to check this. Initial velocity given, final velocity given, and the time given. So I can use this formula, which is equal half parentheses initial velocity is 0, so I will not write it down here. Final velocity is 12.5 multiplied by the time, which is 2.5 seconds. Result of this equation 15.6 meters. At the C, it says what is Karazhan's average velocity during this time interval. Average velocity formula, V average equal delta x over delta t. And as we calculate, x equal 15.6 and the time equal 2.5. So 15.6 over 2.5, 6.24 meter per second. And this is the average velocity. Thanks for listening.